De Silvas from New Hunter Church of Christ. This was a recording that we did on Wednesday night, but I'm going to do it again this morning. It's really early. It's not even light outside yet. It's starting to get light. But I'm going to do a recording. We're going to be reading from Romans 13. This is the true meaning of submission, continuing on in chapter 4. I said chapter 3, but I made a mistake. I meant chapter 4. And it's by Timothy and Chuck Baldwin, award-winning authors who wrote this book. But it really tells the true essence, if you've been following with us and reading along with us with this book, it tells the true essence and real nature of what God is really saying in Romans 13, chapter 13. Before we get started, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this wonderful day. Help me, Lord, to be able to convey the words of your truth through this reading today of Romans chapter 13 in the book here, second edition by Timothy and Chuck Baldwin. That I'd be able to convey the real truth of what's here beyond what they write and what is really meant by what you say in your word. And that people will be able to understand it and take it and apply it and share with others to correct all the things that are going on in churches that are wrong in there today. And all in churches of Christ as well, Lord. New Hunter Church of Christ, I hope and pray and prayerfully hope that people will give to our ministry because I'm a minister and I'm very, very in need for help right now. I have lots of bills and electric, and I hope some people will help because it's really hard. And I don't mind doing this for love, but I need help. And I wouldn't ask for it if I didn't need it. And I just hope that people will help. This is not a hack. This is real. I'm a minister, and I just wish more people would come here to your church and come here to worship with us here at New Hunter Church of Christ in Mechanicsville. I know I'm not perfect, but nobody is, and I know where I sinned and where I've done things, but everybody's done that and fallen short. But I'm a person, and I know Lord, I shouldn't have said do things or say things that I've said, but Lord, I know you've forgiven me, and I hope those people can too and stop judging me. And instead of judging me, they can see where I really am in need and will come to my aid to help me and to help me with my business. In Jesus' name, pray, man. So today what we're going to read is chapter 4, and we're going to tackle the very essence here, what this book is really all about, and what this chapter is going to entail in chapter 4 in Romans 13, dealing in the book, not the Bible, but in the book that Timothy and Chuck Baldwin wrote together. We're going to deal with that God commands unlimited submission to unjust government. Contradicts God's very nature. That's what I'm going to say. What really this should say is the very notion that God would command his people to give unlimited submission to an unjust government actually contradicts really what God's nature really and originally teaches. That's what it should say. But anyway, that's what it says in chapter 4. So we're going to start here. It says, God's word reflects to us his very nature. It says here in Scripture, it says, For I the Lord, I'm having trouble here with this reading device. For I, the Lord, love judgment. I hate robbery, or I hate those who do robbery. It says that God sanctions to us, unto any persons who are in government, as well as the individual, to enforce any acts as his ministers. All right. Thus, in parentheses, demanding unlimited submission. All right. Actually contradicts God's very nature. Not to mention God's very laws. All right. The prophecies that are concerning Jesus and all of his ministries and the plain, reading of Romans chapter 13 God is the author. That's where God is the author of justice for all, meaning that includes, not subcludes, but includes all nations, every generation. Justice is eternal because, God's nature is also eternal. See? So scriptures tell us God's judgment are in all the earth and in all things. God's, truth endures or endureth. In the King James it says to all generations. The Lord is our dwelling place. Okay? And in all generations, God's laws of justice were specifically created, to last forever, with no condition, no end, but just unending, would last forever. It says the foundations of God's laws, justice and righteousness, cannot be removed by his ministers, with his ordination. Okay. One of the crucial criteria, here is where God imposes on all mankind, relative to government, and society, is an oath. This oath is seen all throughout the scriptures. Okay? And that oath would be simply, if you be my people, I will be your God. That's really the oath concerning that he gives us. It's really that simple. Chuck and Timothy don't really say that. And the other oath is, to do right with the laws that God has outlined in Scripture, to multiply, to protect your land and your property, and to protect those who live in your family and your neighbors around you, to practice self-defense. These are all natural laws that God ordained, not the government. Okay, God also made these. God made these laws. They were here before the government was even erected or even formed. And it requires, all of those who are in government to rule accordingly to the qualifications, found in Romans chapter 13. It says in general, to promote good and to punish those who are evil. All right. As this truth also relates to people in society as well. All peace proposed as a fundamental condition, mutual good faith, and when one or a person has broken this good faith, the other also is immediately released, from the obligation to the same. All right. This sacred, this is what the oath is. This sacred pact of justice and peace basically cannot be broken, no matter what. God is the one that established it, and that's what governments as well as individuals also, need to abide by and follow. It says with God's ordination or appropriation, nor with man's, consent. God just does it unconditionally, and it's something that we all need to imitate and follow as men. Scriptures show to us, where he, meaning God, has or hath put forth, his very hands against, such as he at peace with him, he hath broken his, covenant with him. All right. When you don't do those things, you break the covenant with God. That's basically what's being said there in modern translation. These covenants are imposed upon government by God, and to all generations, and to every, soul on this earth. Even God binds himself to his very oaths. Upon this principle, free nations are formed, and that's how they are formed, which means deeming or given that the principal is bound by the just covenants and promises to do exactly, the same, to the extent of that a private individual is bound in like terms or case. Okay? It is a sure sign of one who is not a minister of God, is really called or termed a covenant breaker. When they don't do these things that was just mentioned. God's ordination stands in sharp contrast to those who operate by such rules like this. All right, of inconvenience, which is an inconvenience, and it's also a bunch of lies when you operate like that, like we see in our government today and in other governments in this world. So I'm not going to pick on my government, but a lot of us, what we see the same pattern, what we're reading about here, is exactly just what we just read. God's ordination, such as covenant, breakers, like what we see in our governments all across the world today, would make God unworthy to judge the world. Right? That God would, if he was like this, would use the ministers of Satan, who are carrying out these plots as lies and wickedness, and, the unjust laws of mankind, calling evil good, and of course good being called evil. And that's what we see as a pattern in our government and other governments around the world. Okay? And doing so, what was right, and doing what is right in their own eyes, rather than what God says to do is right, which should be going on in their eyes, not what they think or deem is right. All right, to bind, all mankind into unconditional submission of those who are doing these evils, so that man, may know the justness of God, and man's very need of a Savior would be peculiar indeed. All right, but if man's laws are evil, but simultaneously ordained of God, one could hardly even reconcile God's holy nature at all, because they wouldn't be able to. Because you can't follow the laws of this world when they don't follow God's laws, and say they're right when they're really not, when you're not really applying God's very principles in nature. See? So we got to follow God after God's holy nature, be imitators of that. It doesn't mean we become gods ourselves, like the world tries to teach and what Satan tries to teach, and all these crazy religions that are out here. But we follow his natures by what is set up keyly and solely in the Scriptures. And so what we want to have is God's holy nature, with his, and see, but see, then if we got this unholy, ordination and earthly ministers that are doing these things, yet, where Scripture reveals to us that God expects for gods or children, that's what he calls us really in the Old Testament. You see the term gods. He's not saying that we're gods, but we are imitators of God. That's what he means by, when you see that in the Old Testament, like in the King James, it says gods, it means we are the very children of his way, meaning we're doing, as we'll reveal more in here. I don't want to give away too much here at the chase because I've already read this. But we are gods, meaning we're the children of his very way. And that's what it means when you see the word gods here, in the Old Testament, it means children. All right, or in children, it's like I'm saying. Children of the Most High, meaning we are his chosen children. To be ministers, in the very role, in this very role of higher powers, meaning God's the higher powers, not higher powers of this world. All right, it does not mean not beast. That would be following after the worldly government and laws of this world. We need to seek and imitate God's laws, and that's what the government also needs to emulate too, as well. Not the world laws, like all this dishonesty and spying that's going on with the internet and things. We need to be imitators of God's rule, not imitators of the world where we have to spy and surveil on everybody and imitate people and take away people's freedoms and liberties. just so that a certain class or group can have power and superiority, when really that's not what God put in this world. He wants all of us to have the same power and superiority, not where a group is over a bunch of other people. That's not how God meant to set up. That's all from Satan. That's all from hell. That's the devil. All right? So we don't want to be beasts of a worldly government. We want to be beasts we don't want to be beasts. We want to be children of God and emulate and duplicate what God said according to what is stated in God's word about the nature and other laws of what He's established and ordained for the government as well as for the individuals to follow. All right, to better illustrate this, God describes, in quotations, children of God or gods. In Psalms 82, verse 6, if you want to turn there, I'm going to read this in the King James Version because that's where this is coming from. It says this, which is the same word, for huno, or, see, I said it earlier because I read it earlier. Eleni, yem, that's Greek. It means Eleni, yem, which means children of God or gods, or Eleni, yem. God meaning, or He uses to describe those who are to judge in civil disputes. In Exodus 22, verse 8, I'm going to read from the King James. It says, as higher powers, these gods, or children of God, Eneli, Yem, are magistrates, and higher powers have been further described as being God's premier creation, indeed. That's what God says to us in Scripture, people. So we need to, that's what I was just saying, we need to imitate what He says about the law, and the government needs to do the same. Our governments and other governments around the world are not doing that. They're going by Satan's rule because they want to establish this one world centralized, globalized alliance, called the New World Order. Or they might coin it as different things, Agenda 21, or the United Nations. These are all factors or footstones off of that. We need to break out of that. So we as Christians who have power that can do that, we need to do that. Because God doesn't want one world government to be in rule or to make us all enslaved, to be ruled over by that one central hierarchy. He wants us all to have that same right, not to be ruler or subjects to others. But yet we need to be, individuals. So that's what the Bible teaches. All right. Now let's look at this. The second thing here. It says, government is nothing more than an agent for God. So, see, that's just what I was saying. The government needs to do the same thing as what is given to individuals. It should also be given and granted to God. I mean, the government needs to emulate what was established through His Word. How it's supposed to be set up and how it was formed when God formed it to man. When man elevated to government, the same concepts and the same rules should apply. There's no deviation to that, or exception to the rule. Okay, but of course, that's not happening right now because we have allowed evil men to come in and women to come in to rob us of that. But we can change that through votes and due process and through revolutions by restoring the republic, but not by destroying the society. But by revolution is by taking those out of power, getting them under arrest, and locking those people up and removing them, not impeaching them, but also arresting them if need be. But see, that's what the government's supposed to be, as agents of God, just like we're supposed to follow God, they are too, because they're the mouthpiece of God. I've seen that in Scripture somewhere. I can't remember. I think it's in Exodus, but I don't know exactly chapter and verse. But if anybody knows, somebody can, find that for me, but it just came to me just now. But that's what the government, as well as individuals, are supposed to emulate. It's the same rules that are set up on this earth. But anyway, it says the agent, we're still talking about, the government here, has no more power than the principal itself. So the servant has no more power, in other words, than the master, than its master. So basically, to say this more plainly, is that the creation has no more authority, that all creation has no more authority than its creator, which is God. Not Satan, not the prince of this world, but the Prince of Peace, Jesus, God, than the creator. So that's what we should follow, right? So how can God limit his own actions to a covenant, for peace, of all mankind and nations, but yet ordain his ministers to continually violate the same covenant? Because God wouldn't do that. And another question is, how can individuals and also societies not have God's ordination to inflict justice upon others? Yet the agent of the people, who is the agent of the people, or the agents of the people, and the ministers of God, poses that arbitrary and it's unjust power. That's a question there. This cannot be at all. So there's two questions. The answer is this cannot be at all. So, it's so important, So, I'm going to read this last question again. It says, or maybe I'll just read them both. No, I won't read them both. I'll just read this one last question. It says, how can individuals and society not have God, ordination to inflict injustice upon others, yet the agent of the people, which is the government, and the ministers of God possesses that arbitrary and unjust power? That's a question. Well, the answer to those two questions, I only read that one. This cannot be. It says neither the princes, now listen, the princes, it's in parentheses, meaning it's emphasis, council, nor the whole body, of the people can exempt him, meaning God, from his, perpetual responsibility before, judgment seat, before the very judgment seat of God. So, were God to ordain actions which he condemns? The answer to that one is no. God would if God did do that, though, however, God would certainly violate his covenants to all nations and would sanction on one hand what he had condemns on the other. See, so God's not going to, basically, he's not going to manipulate what he says, and he's not going to, change his mind, because God never does. When he says something, it always stays that way. He's not going to, change his mind once he sets it in motion, because God never does. So if Romans chapter 13 requires for every soul to be in such absolute, what's that? Absolute subjection to so-called higher powers, meaning man, not God, that any, disobedience or, resistance to those in power would classify such a person as evil. Okay? In parentheses says, and thus receiving to him or herself damnation. So then, this is what would happen. Then one, God has forsaken his own standards of righteousness to the biblical examples that are given in God's word, of the same are also erroneous, including the apostles, for example. That would be all erroneous. But of course, that's not true. God's not going to do that. And three, if God were to do that, then God has also fellowship with, government rulers who frame mischief by laws and stipulations or limitations that are contrary to God's own, word. And so God's not going to do that, because God doesn't contradict himself. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Christians today, or even in all time, would be forced to take a covenant to support that is evil, and what is evil? Evil men and women, and to follow those who are, at anonymity, with God. And we don't want to be at anonymity with God. We want to be in accordance with God, doing what God says. So, of course, God's not going to do such a thing, because God would not counterfeit himself, because God's not like that. Unlike the Savior, on the other hand, which isn't God, the Savior of this world would do that in an instant, because that's what's going on. If you don't see that, you're blind, because that is what's going on all over the world and all these governments, and that's why we have all this greed and all this out-of-control economy and everything, because of the results of that. With them, what they call cooking the books, so forth. But anyway, let me stick to this lesson here. Such a perspective makes necessary that the Christian accept two warnings here, or warring views. Accept two warring views of justice or righteousness as morative, and they live obedience to an alien. That's basically what it says, to an alien, religion in his or her civil life, meaning your own personal life. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be in accordance with God, not serving a standard or serving something else. We're supposed to be serving the Lord. So how we get that instruction is through God's Word, by reading and praying, and God asking Him for guidance, and so forth, and talking to other Christians that are in the faith, in the body, the brethren. So how then can we, this is the question, have only one master and one standard of truth, that's out there, under this doctrine? Well, you can't. All right. It says, in addition to what was just said, God's creation laments for a rejection of unconditional submission to earthly authority. You get that? You only give it to God. You don't give it to earthly authority. You give it to God, God's authority. All right? So God's not going to do that. So basically it says God's creation laments for a rejection to unconditional submission to earthly authority. See, because it's supposed to be given, it's supposed to be given to God, not to somebody else other than God. So it is bad enough that rich men and women who oppress or oppress you and draw you before the judgment seat without any cause or any case of doing any wrongdoing, who have basically condemned and killed the just, meaning the righteousness, by their wicked deeds. Were God to ordain and demand submission to the very acts, which who destroys God's justice and His, meaning God's very creation, any hope of living in peace with others would totally be annihilated, meaning it wouldn't be possible. And that's where we get that from. Peace comes from God, really, not from God, not from government or from Satan. It comes from God. False peace comes from Satan. True peace comes from God. Okay, and considering, let's look at considering some practicalities here. When rich men and women draw just men before, the very judgment seat or court seats, without a justice system in place, like we see them trying to do today, right now. This is what's going on here. But let me read here. It says what they're doing here is that the just man or woman do. So I got to turn the page here. So give me a second here. Let me turn it. Do not resist. When they should resist. Okay, because the innocent are overcome by sheer force or forces. However, meaning they're scared, so they give in instead of standing up and saying no. However, being overcome by force does not mean that the innocent have no right to resist against those who are tyrants. All right. While weak, poor, and repressed, men, or women may submit to those tyrants solely for the very lack of a better alternative. Such men and women possess, the right regardless, and may, in parentheses, and should use their God-given rights instead. And, and facilities to plan for resistance against those who are doing evil and wrong. And methods also to obtain their liberties and to keep them. All right? And it's very important, folks, because liberty comes from God. It doesn't come from a constitution. It comes from God. And people who wrote the Constitution were men and women who were Christian and who were godly people. So that's how this nation was established here in America, and how many nations eventually in the world, when they first formed, were like that too. They didn't have the same constitution like we have, but they had something similar to it. All right, now let's look at this. The state that God has condemned an unconditional obligation to all those who submit upon all persons who are not privileged enough to, hold such power. Is what they're really saying is to state that God has granted an unconditional right to command upon all, all people or individuals who hold de facto power instead of de jure power. We want to follow after de jure power, not de facto power. The de facto power states, but this is not true. Okay, it says in fact, no such convenience of right is even implied throughout Scripture here at all. Of that. God founded the earth, or formed the earth, and also in wisdom. And even with the understanding that is based upon His very nature, basically what He set up, His very foundations. And yet this would be a complete contradiction of God. Were His ministers who were ordained to destroy His most, precious creation, which is mankind, us. That's what He created. That's what He saved for the last, was to create people, mankind. As a part of God's creation, He created all men in His image. Scriptures refer repeatedly to mankind's will and to good pleasure as the very character or characteristics of God's nature. This human will and good pleasure that is ordained by God includes the right to inhabit it, utilize, and to improve one's very own life. Okay? By using the resources of God's creation. Let's look at Isaiah 45, verse 18. King James, I'm reading from, says, reveals to us the Lord that created the heavens and the earth, God Himself that formed the earth out of nothing and made it, meaning He hath established it, meaning He had created it, not in vain, but He formed, meaning God formed it to be inhabited. So it says, I am the Lord, and there is none else or no one else before me, other than me. There's emphasis there. There is no one else. I'm the Lord, there is no one else. All right? That's how it is in the Word, God did not create the earth to be an inhabitants of slaves who are over people, or created a bunch of Nimrods either, of society. No, rather, God granted the earth to all mankind now listen to this, that is common for every person's enjoyment and for its use. If God created the earth, to enjoy by all humanity who follow after God's laws, then it is necessary, also that God provides the very means through which those people can, basically effectuate, that very right. So this basically relationship between natural right and means is in fact, the very reflective quality or qualities which God uses to prove to all mankind his sovereignty, and goodness, stating, I am the Lord, and there is none else. So given that God established the earth as all herein with divine, with having the very divine understanding and wisdom as a revelation of his very nature, what we see in Romans chapter 13 here, it makes this very clear to all of us that only those who do evil should be afraid. They should be very afraid. I'm going to add that. Of the wrath of God. Be afraid of a God, or, should be very afraid. A God-ordained government, means that God may deliver the innocent, from the deceitful or wicked, and the unjust man or woman. The reason for submission is made here, the reason for submission is made here clear. In Romans chapter 13, more than acknowledges the God ordained authority of higher powers, meaning de jure powers, to govern justly. Meaning he gave the higher power to govern justly over its people. Means, it means it prioritizes the security of justice and the all happiness of society against those who are deceitful and unjust. Men and women who pray and who would do harm to all those who are innocent. Such deceitful and unjust, men and women at times are especially those rich men and women in government today who oppress or think they rule over others who are unjust, unjustly. They rule over others, and so basically, drawing or taking to its logical and practical conclusion, the tenet of unconditional submission to any higher power advances unconscionable hostility in society and assaults God's very nature, because God's ordination, would create nothing more than but incentive, would create nothing but incentive for the strongest and evilest, in society and in government to trample all over the innocent men and women and their very property. All right, now, consequently, this is what we're trying to say. God would have, in brackets, because this is with emphasis, God would have set up the right hand of his adversaries, and would have made his enemies to rejoice over this. But that's not to rejoice. Now that's not what he did, as we'll find out. And all of mankind would continually be in a state of war with each other. This is ludicrous. This is lunacy, upon the prescription of the Prince of Peace, which is Jesus, not the Prince of this world. Don't get confused with that. It's talking about the Prince of Peace here. It's Jesus Christ. Being the Prince of Peace requires, if you want to be a follower of the Prince of Peace, it requires that his ministers who are over these things, like myself, follow the orders and precepts of the Prince, meaning Jesus Christ. The ways of peace, not of war, against the innocent or against the poor, which is the innocent. Praying for your leaders as we are, instructed to do so in scriptures, would become a silly suggestion to do in practice and belief were the Prince of Peace to ordain evil ministers and unjust laws and acts. All right, this is especially true for all those who hold, the name, who hold the name it and claim it kind of idea of doctrine, and of prayer. Okay, so how could God, answer prayers, that are concerning, of rulers, whose very purpose is, let's see, I messed up here, I forgot something. Very purpose is that we may, lead and quiet and peaceful life. In 1 Timothy 2, chapter 2, verses 1 through 3 tell us that. And yet ordain evil government or governments simultaneously, meaning at the same time? No. God would be divided, basically, is what would happen against himself under that kind of doctrine. So what Christian, is that what it says? Yeah, what Christians would find, prayer, what Christian would find prayer a relief from God's ordaining the very actions and demands of the most powerful, all right, and evil men and women on this earth, all right. It would be as one who fights the air. Okay, you can't really get much done with that, can you? But when you go with the Lord, you can. It says, not only would it seem silly to even pray for your leaders, but it would also tempt all justice-seeking, persons to prefer power over truth and also principle. Goodness. Because God, let me get this thing. This thing is acting weird. All right, because God's ordination would follow only those powerful or rich, okay, who are rich enough to attain possession of government. Yet scriptures state, that, and I'm gonna turn over here. They state that God's laws do not tempt the righteous to follow the ways of the wicked. Okay, by saying, for the rod of the wicked will or shall not rest upon the very lot of the righteous. Okay, lest or least the righteous put forth their hands unto iniquity. All right, so question is, were God to ordain the very actions of the wicked against those who are of the righteous? Well, undoubtedly, that would not be so. God's ordination would more than tempt the righteous. This cannot be the case. All right. Just as Romans chapter 13 reveals to us, the concern that's concerning the purpose, of God's ministers who have been elected to do the right thing. In the scriptures, it shows God's nature and also correlative. That's what it says, correlative. I didn't read that wrong. Ordinations, by saying this: do good, O Lord, unto all those that be good, and to them that are, upright in their hearts. You mean by their very actions. Ordinating evil, as a rule of society, or saying that's good against the innocent, is anything but good to the upright. As we saw in Scripture, it wouldn't go that way. It says unconditional submission literally destroys the very foundations of the individual, society, and government, who is established, by God. In the very beginning, it was established by God in the very beginning. And if the foundations be or are destroyed, what can the righteous do? Well, let's look at that. Indeed, the righteous could do nothing against evil, who are ordained by God, because God wouldn't ordain those who are evil, So, we see that there. All right. However, as was rightfully stated concerning this proposition, we're going to look at that. I'm going to read it here. And here it is. This is in brackets. It says, in preposition, it says, which leads to such monstrous conclusions that would bind the nations to a footstool of power with iron chains, and utterly crushed every free aspiration that would invest with the very sanctions of divine name, or hold the divine name, the most fragrant usurpation, and the most unrelenting despotism stance, self condemn or condemnation. So that's what would happen. So what we're saying is God's nature shows to us that submission like this is not godly. Rather, or godly at all is what I originally said, but rather it is an Old and New Testament sign of degenerate Christians who are like that today, who behave this way. These are Christians who are having no men in the land who are willing or even able enough to protect the very lives of their family and properties and rights, of individuals and societies against tyrants or tyrannical governments. Right? Consequently, when acting upon the delusion, we become a reproach to our very neighbors and a scorn. It sounds horrible, but it's what happens when we don't do these things. That's what happens. And a derision to them that are about us, meaning who live around us. If they're like that, that's what you become. And what happens is, as a result, we violate, that's what we do when we don't have that ability, we violate the most sacred duty that was given from God to ourselves, our families, and our very neighbors. It is, of course, a violation of the golden rule of Jesus Christ, of what he stated, and the golden rule of the Old Testament, which reflects the very essence of God's divine nature that was set up in the very beginning in this world. In the Bible, it says, all right, let's look at this. It says the Old Testament's exhortation that we fear God and keep in keeping with his commandments or commands, being the whole, this is basically, I think I'm reading this wrong. No, it's being the whole duty of man, meaning along with Jesus Christ, who commanded that we do, unto others, or do to others what we should have them do unto or to us. Treat each other the way you want to be treated. That's what that really is, in other words. Are the very foundation upon which society has been built upon, and which exist in a state of nature and in also society. This commandment of God, certainly, include one's relationship with other people in society as well, and also applies to government or governments. And treating others as oneself certainly places a universal, duty on all, of all mankind relative to society. Without this quality of good faith, prevents, it prevents within society, society would in fact decay quite rapidly without that quality. So this same, formula that that good faith, exists within God's ordained government or governments. It is quite curious how God's earthly ministers can be those who do not, even, fear him. And also, much worse than that, they also contradict him and all his laws, such as persons would not possess the very necessary good faith elements, which God has required or requires of higher powers, who are in higher power. Unconditional submission contradicts all commandments of God. To seek peace and to do those things which create peace, okay? In comparison, it says the thief, usurper, and the tyrant are those who contradict this purpose, of Jesus Christ and his laws, which is the scriptures. Says, the thief cometh or comes not, but for to steal and kill and to lame and to destroy. I have come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Okay? That says, students of God's law, or in God's word, or law, it's the same thing. It's harmonious here. Laws have stated, the end of natural laws is to make him act, agreeably to his real, interest, Right. says God revealed laws confirm the same thing. The same thing. So seeking peace in a state of nature, inadvertently requires a body of people to form a government, to protect each person's property and life itself. This truth has existed, since God created mankind, since the very beginning, in other words. Scriptures, common sense, natural law, and, human history all confirm this. They confirm that unconditional submission creates anything but peace on earth. And all the intent and prayer in the whole entire world would not even withstand, in the world, notwithstanding usurpers, people that go against that, peace and rights alone, with their abettors, do not constitute men. Okay, I hate it when they break up the words. It's ministers. I can read here. It's just that they broke up the word there. I hate that when they do that. Just lost my place, folks. I am so sorry. Give me a few seconds to find it. Oh boy. Alright, I found it. I'm sorry. I'm back. Ministers of God, but violators of God's laws. And the peace of society, God's nature defines it as such. That's something we gotta really know. When we are looking and we're trying to find something, we'll read chapter 5 next week. We'll continue on there with that. But in Romans, we go against what God says, it's not going to work. It's just all going to fall flat. So that's why it's so important that we follow and interpret His will. Dear Lord, thank you for this wonderful day. I just hope people come away from finding out, what the Scriptures really say and entail about submission in Romans chapter 13, and that they will seek and do the necessary research for themselves to see what the truth is, and not go by from what their churches have taught them all this time and accept it as law without accepting and really looking at it and digging in and locating and finding the information for themselves, Lord. That's what this whole book is about. It's about to show what God's divine order is and nature is of this world, and the same nature and pattern should also be amplified through the government. And see, what we have in this world is becoming more and more not like that. And that's why our freedoms are being more and more eroded, because we don't have that in our government, because they're becoming more collective in nature and more tyrannical worldwide. And that's why we have all this breakdown and why we have all this chaos and war happening, because without a government being of God's law, Lord, of your laws, of your divine word, Lord, we have chaos, we have nothing. And, society and peace and liberty and all those good things have ruined quickly without the presence of you being wrapped up in all the details. And Lord, I just hope people will get that and really try that and emulate that with their husbands and wives, and will treat people equally and will let them decide things equally. Man is the head of the household, but it's also woman is also the head of the household. It's not just the man just being the head all by himself. It's the man and woman that are head together. And that's what you teach in your word, Lord. And I hope people will get that from Romans chapter 13. Thank you, Lord, for everything you do. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. I'll see you next week. Please help us If you want to donate something, please give to us. Our address is 7110 New Hunter Road, apartment 423, Mechanicsville, Virginia 23111. Like I said, I really do need your help. So if you can help us with money or donating tablets or computers or new cameras or anything, please help us, Lord, that people will be able to do that. And I hope that you will consider and prayerfully consider helping us as being one of your sources of ministries that you do support. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week. And I hope that you all will help us. And if you want to call us and make a donation, it's 804-789-9373. And if you need any computer work, and you can help that way too by, if you want me to help you with your computers or help you select a new computer or help you build one or whatever you need in that regard. And please don't hesitate to give me a call at 804-789-9373. Evangelist Mike, as well as owner and CEO of DeSilva's Media. I'll see you later. God bless. Thank you. And thanks to those who do help, who are helping as well. I don't want to leave that out because I really do appreciate those who have given in the last month. But we need money for July's electric bill. It's already August, and you haven't got no donations for July. So I'm a little worried and a little freaking out because things have gotten a little higher. It's making it a little harder on me. So if you want this to continue, I'm going to need your help. Otherwise, if I don't get any help from you, we're probably going to have to turn the internet off. And I don't want to do that because I need it for my IT business. So I hope that you can help me in either of those ways that I mentioned. I love you all because I'd rather make the work. I don't want your charity. But if you can help me by giving me work, or you can help me by buying some of the products that we sell that I mentioned in other blogs and advertisements, and online and so forth, where you see it on Facebook and things, you can help in that regard. In that way, thanks a lot for those who are helping once again. I love you, and God bless. It's Pastor Evangelist Michael DeSilva.